Hey everybody, welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast, the number one resource for learning what it means to have a healed heart, connect more deeply with Jesus, and experience true and lasting transformation in your life. I'm one of your hosts, Kathy Little.
And I'm your other host, Melinda Wilson. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss the fresh content we're continuing to release. And while you're at it, we greatly appreciate your help in getting the word out by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a quick review. You can also keep up with us by following our social media by searching face-to-faceministries.org on Facebook. That's no spaces, no numbers, and no caps. And on Instagram at face-to-face-min, and that's all one word.
We want to invite you to join us in our free face-to-face heart healing network and in our premium network. Be part of a growing community of people just like you who are wanting to dive deeper into what it means to access the full benefits package of the cross and learning how to help others do the same.
Our team also offers one-on-one ministry sessions that can be done virtually, and you can also learn how to help others connect with Jesus and find healing in their lives through training we offer in the ministry model we use. And for more information about all of the resources, trainings, and events that we offer, visit face-to-faceministries.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter.
All right, so let's dive into today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Episode 89.
Yeah.
Why is 89 a special number for Melinda? I'm going to totally give away my age. High school graduation, y'all. Who else? Because it was one of the happiest days of my life. I am filled with joy and appreciation.
Well, it was the year I graduated from college.
Oh, well, there you go.
I am older. We know this.
Let me tell y'all, I was so happy to get out of high school. I was like hyperventilatingly happy, if that's a word, hyperventilatingly. And the principal of this school, it was a small Christian school. She actually came over to me and said, Melinda, calm down. She was embarrassed that I was happy to be set free. We all of our friends, we were calling it prison, and we were like, we're getting out of prison.
Oh my gosh.
So 1989 has actually a lot of positive connotation for me because I was done with,
there you go.
I was done with mandatory schooling at that point.
Well, yes.
I no longer had to sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day.
I know, everybody. And now it's like, I can't even imagine those days in school. It's like, I actually wouldn't mind life to be simple again. Because it's not simple anymore. Oh my goodness. But hey, we've got some things coming up next weekend. You guys are going to get this early, I think 19th or so. And the 22nd and 23rd of January, we're doing an advanced or expanded. It's an expanded Emmanuel approach training in Amarillo, Texas area. And we're also live streaming that. And so even if you can't travel, join us via live stream, because that's going to be really powerful. We're going to utilize the Zoom technology and the breakout rooms and some Facebook live stream and stuff. But even if you can't make it to in person, we'd love to have you come for that. And you can find information about that on our website, face-to-faceministries.org/training. And then the week after that, we're going to be where?
In Medford, Oregon.
Yeah.
And I mean, in both amazing locations, if you can join us. Medford, we will not be live streaming. So we'd love to have you in person.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
But either one, come and join us. And the Amarillo training is at a very low price for those, if you're thinking that might be an obstacle. It's actually super affordable. We'd love to have you join us, and really looking forward to that.
Yeah. And then we are off and running with some really amazing training and practice labs and connection small group type things in our premium network, in the Face-to-Face Heart Healing Premium. You can find out more information about that on our website as well. Love to have you join us and be part of what we're doing, y'all. We're raising up an army of heart healers, and would love to have you join us.
Yeah, we've started doing we're going to be doing demos. Yesterday we did some practice, a little bit of teaching, and then a group exercise. And then everyone got to break up into groups of 3. We call them triads, and start practicing this stuff. And even if you don't want to be a minister per se, do you want deeper intimacy with Jesus? Are you looking for a way to be able to help other people connect with Jesus? This is for you, and finding it within a community of like-spirited, like-hearted people. And so we're just warmly welcome you into that community.
Love to have you guys join us. And we want to bring back, this is actually a guest today that we interviewed about a year and a half, 2 years. It's 2 years ago, March.
2 years.
From a conference in Denver area. And we want to introduce you to Chris Coursey yet again. If you remember that name from like 18 or 19, episode 18 or 19. And he is with an organization called ThriveToday. So he's just released a book, which we just want to make sure you guys knew about because it is a now book for now.
It is. It's called The Joy Switch, and how your brain's secret circuit affects your relationships and how you can activate it, and talking about what triggers us and how to get untriggered, how to get unstuck. And, brain science really is fascinating. The way that God made our brain, we talk about that a lot in our training. We've talked about that in other podcasts, but this is something that gives us so much hope. And Chris is definitely a joy bringer.
Oh, he's a joy bomb.
It was wonderful just to sit down and talk with him because I was feeling joy the entire time because he knows how to do that. And we can actually learn how to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Bring people joy no matter what.
So here is our conversation with Chris, and hope you'll enjoy it. And please check out thrivetoday.org for his resources. And he's going to talk about that a little bit more throughout the conversation as well.
Well, welcome, Chris, to our podcast.
Hey.
We're so glad you're here.
Welcome back. I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, welcome back.
We talked to you about 2 years ago at the Thrive Transform Conference.
That's right.
Transform Conference. And had a bunch of interviews in that one day, got you and your wife, and so happy to have you back.
Thank you. It's so good to be back. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you both during that time at the conference, and I've been very excited to just be here with you again. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And you'll need to just go watch some video of Chris because he really is a total joy bringer. I think in our last interview, you were smiling the entire conversation, and he probably will be today. And I really want to just dive in because your book, The Joy Switch, comes at an absolutely impeccable time in our society, in our world. And just to read the subtitle, How Your Brain's Secret Circuit Affects Your Relationships and How You Can Activate It. And talking about our buttons being pushed and what sets you off is in the back cover. So let's just talk about, because we really want to put some tools in people's hands, Chris, to help them understand their brain, to help them understand what the heck is enemy mode. When do we know we're in it? But just talk about the book, first of all, how that even came to be and your journey with discovering this brain science stuff.
You know what? The year was 1997. I was just a young lad with no experience. And I had an opportunity to do an internship with a recovery ministry that worked with survivors of severe trauma. And it was during that summer internship that I found a folder of a new book that was coming out called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. And I quickly just started reading this book. And then soon I went to a conference where one of the authors, Jim Wilder, was speaking. And I remember it clear as day. He said, your brain runs best on joy, and God created you for joy. And all of a sudden that explained my life, and it explained those that I was serving and this ministry. It's like, wow, joy. That's what I was missing, all of these years in my life. And at that point, I was intrigued. I started studying as much as I could possibly study from the team, basically, like Jim Wilder. And soon I was introduced to Carl Lehman. And I just dove in, reading the brain science. And what I was looking for was both how do I have this intimate connection with Emmanuel that I've always wanted, but I didn't really know how to do it. And also, how do I help those that I'm sitting with in these, ministry sessions, people who are just really profoundly hurting. And when you sit with people in pain, you quickly discover where you need relational skills. And I realize I need a whole lot of relational skills because I really don't know what I'm doing. And I soon started working with Jim Wilder. We developed training on what we call the 19 skills. Basically was, brain science said there's some very crucial skills that you learn the first 3 years of life. And we're like, 3 years? Like, I don't know what I was doing the first 3 years of life because I was, too young. But as I started to learn this material, I realized, okay, these are skills that you ideally would learn from family caregivers, like, people that you would interact with who have the skills. But nobody had ever tested, can an adult with the skills pass on those skills to another adult? And so that's where Jim and I created what we just called Thrive Training as kind of an experiment, helping people learn skills that they didn't even necessarily know that they needed, but they intuitively felt its presence or its absence in their interactions. So this also meant that I had to learn the skills because I, really didn't have these skills. I had a little bit here and there, but not a whole lot in my tool belt. So what was amazing was this training was deeply impactful. And at the time it was just a one conference. We just figured that training event would be all that we did, but it went so well. It resonated with people. We're like, well, now we gotta do this again. So, at the time I was just pastoral counselor, I was pastoring. Thrive was just the one thing we did for, one time each year. But now it's my wife and I pretty much do this full time. And it's all about equipping people with what we'd say the skills to thrive. And one of the foundational skills of the 19 skills is just learning to get in my relational sweet spot, as I call it in the book, The Joy Switch. So it's just, how do I get into relational mode where I can learn these skills? Because if I'm not in relational mode, if I'm in what we'd call enemy mode, so Jim Wilder labeled it as when you're relationally offline, your brain can't access the skills if you do have them. But if you don't have them, you're really in trouble. So I wanted a book that introduced these concepts and just, provided practice, just where people could learn about it and practice some exercise so they can have the language. And then they can have, a little bit of practice under their belts so that they can actually feel the difference of what it's like when you're in relational mode, what it's like when you're fading into enemy mode, and what to do. Like, what do I do when I'm in this non-relational place? I mean, we all know those moments we've fallen out of relational mode and we don't always know what to do. How do we get back to that sweet spot? So this book was my attempt to create a very introductory resource that takes the work of Dr. Wilder, Dr. Carl Lehman, and just makes it very practical and accessible, with the hope that people can actually practice this stuff and create habits and also use it with their families and their networks and in the world, right? I mean, how do we get back into this relational sweet spot? And and I wanted a book that fit in your back pocket because a lot of my friends are like, Chris, a lot of your books are too big. You need to write a book that'll fit in my back pocket. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make that happen. So here's the book.
Wow.
Pocket.
Well, it's a great format too. It can fit in your back pocket and is a very easy read, very well laid out, very well presented, and very excited that you wrote it because I think it's probably one of the most important books people could have in their hands right now. And
that's right. We need it, don't we?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about. Well, you tell us where the best, because we say enemy mode, and that sounds like really kind of scary. Yeah. I'm not anybody's enemy.
Yeah.
But maybe unpack that for us and then talk about how the heck we get, what is this joy switch? But let's talk about enemy mode. What does that mean?
Yeah. So initially in the book, I call it airplane mode, which is like, when you've been on an airplane, you're supposed to put your phone in airplane mode, but then you inevitably forget that your phone's in airplane mode. You walk off the airplane, you wonder why you're not getting any texts or calls, and you notice, my phone is in airplane mode. So I'm not like sending, receiving. In a sense, when your relational brain is offline, you're not updating. So if we're interacting and suddenly I become angry or worried and I overwhelm you, And when my brain goes into airplane mode or enemy mode, I don't realize like I'm like, you feel like roadkill because I'm running you over with my intensity or my words or my presence. So at that point, it's not going to be very helpful as long as I'm relationally offline. I might even enjoy, running you over and when I'm relationally offline. Like, people get that feeling like, well, they need to, feel some pain so they won't do it again. Like these crazy things that we say when we're relationally offline. But enemy mode is a term Jim Wilder came up with. And basically enemy mode is what it feels like when like the people I normally love and enjoy, they feel like enemies. Maybe it's because my wife and I are in a conflict and I'm feeling misunderstood. And suddenly I just like feel like I need to like protect myself. And I'm mad at her. So I'm feeling shame. Or my kids are, high energy and very loud. And suddenly I go from enjoying their presence to now I'm just kind of in some distress because I'm just feeling overwhelmed by the intensity, or it's too loud. And that triggers some pain from my past where I felt unprotected. So suddenly my children, I feel they kind of feel like enemies in that moment. I just need to put a stop to it. Like you get that feeling where I just need to make this stop. Whatever this is, we just go into like all your focus is on making something stop. And that is kind of how it feels when your brain shifts or slips into enemy mode. It's just, I'm not enjoying the people that I would normally enjoy. In some ways, it might be an argument that I feel like I need to win. I just have this sense like, I don't want to lose. I don't want to be wrong. I want to win. And that becomes your focus. And, really, we're not a good version of ourselves in enemy mode. Like, we just don't have access to those relational skills that we might normally use to help us calm down or to help us repair or to help us feel some of God's peace and God's presence. Those are kind of unreachable in enemy mode. Like they're, parts of your relational engine just kind of shut down. So we're not in a very good place or space when we're in enemy mode. And people on the receiving end of that just kind of feel run over, right? They just feel run over by my words or my intensity. Or possibly I just shut down in enemy mode. So it could be high energy or low energy. High energy is I blast everybody. My filters offline, I'm just blasting. Like I'm in blast mode. But also I can shut down. There could be a low energy response where I just kind of shut down and just kind of shrink into the corner and not interacting with people. And I just kind of feel like I've given up. So it can be, a high energy, kind of an angry blasting, or just be like, what, I surrender. I'm just shutting down. What's the point? This is hopeless. And we just kind of go into maybe some despair. So it can be hard to recognize because on the outside, people might appear very much relational, but internally they're not fully there. Maybe their mind's somewhere else. Maybe they're hiding what they're really feeling and thinking about you. It can be very tough. And as you said, in many ways, our world is kind of stuck in enemy mode. And when we don't know how to get out, it's not a fun place to visit for very long.
Yeah.
And it's not fun to be around either. I mean, I was going to say it's not fun to be around those people, but it's not fun to be around yourself either.
Yes,
when you're in that place. It's like you can't escape. So give us some practical, for those that haven't even heard of relational skills and may not study them, but want tools to how the heck do I get out of this enemy mode? What are some ways that people can get themselves back to that relational place?
Yeah. So in the book, I kind of paint the picture of what it can be like when you're offline, what it feels like intuitively when you're in enemy mode. And I use an acrostic called CARS, CARS in the book. And the goal basically is just for people to help learn what helps me when I feel this way. Like some people might want to go out in nature. Going for a walk in nature could be very relaxing, right? Yeah, I love that.
That's me.
Go to the beach, or maybe it's a pet. If you have a pet, just being with your pet can actually be comforting and quieting. But CARS just stands for, the C stands for connecting. So my point with connecting is, there's friends that you have that when you go to, they just help you feel seen, heard, and understood. Like you feel valued. You can share with them and you just feel like this person is in it with me. They get it. They get me. That's kind of what the connecting is all about, is you just go to those people that really help you feel valued and understood, right? Or we can, also connect with a manual and interact with a manual and tell a manual what we're feeling, what's going on. That could actually help to quiet and get relational. And the R is for appreciation. So I call appreciation packaged joy. It's just remembering the good stuff, remembering those special moments that made your face light up or just made you feel some joy. And so when you remember those appreciation moments, your brain responds as though you're reliving it all over again. So that's the cool thing, is I feel better and my brain is basically, that joy file is opened and I'm feeling the same feelings that I felt, when that happened. Even the same chemicals are released in your body when you remember the good stuff. And if you share it, like even share it with some friends or family members, then they feel appreciation. And actually their brain responds as though they experienced it as well. So you're just you just can't go wrong with appreciation. You just feel it, share it, and notice your relational circuit start to light back up like a Christmas tree. And the R is for rest. So we just need that pause. Like joy's high energy. We can only sustain joy for so long before we need a breather. Mm-hmm. So with rest, it's just kind of a relational pause. Maybe you take that deep breath, or you just find a quiet place for a few moments. It's just kind of like coming up for air so that we can reset. So the rest is just the pause. It's low energy and it actually recharges our battery for more joy. So that's the R for rest. And then the S is for Shalom My Body, which is actually a set of exercises that Wilder and Lehman use. It's basically like a jump starting your relational circuit to come on. It's part of stimulating what's called your vagus nerve, right? Which is that nerve at the base of your brain, and it connects all your organs. And so one thing that happens when you stimulate that vagal nerve, it's really good for you, we're discovering. And one of the things it can do is help quiet your body and help you shift out of that high energy, what's called that sympathetic state, where your nervous system is just like really running fast, like with anger or maybe fear. So the Shalom My Body is just a series of exercises that's quieting. We have a YouTube channel. People can see me demonstrate those or see Wilder or even Lehman online. But if they just Google ThriveToday on YouTube or Chris Coursey, they'll see all the exercises. They're very simple, very practical, but it's a great way to jumpstart your relational circuit if you're just offline and you need kind of a go-to response. So I give those suggestions, but honestly, it's finding whatever helps you to return to your relational sweet spot where you feel calm and you feel anchored in the storm. It really is a game changer.
Yeah, and just to recap those, the C is connect, A, appreciation, rest, and then shalom.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. And they can get that even on your website, and you talk about that in the book as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Really practical and so simplified. Thanks for the acrostic. That helps.
Yes. Yeah. I like simple. Simple and practical. That's my goal, honestly. I just want something that people can read and go, oh yeah, okay, I can do this.
Let's talk about attunement, because, one of your chapters, I'm thinking of the story you shared about Mason, and this young man came to you just in major distress, and obviously in that relational circuit's off. And right now we want to be able to not only help ourselves, and I use that analogy all the time, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first and making sure you're relational and before trying to help somebody else. If you're in enemy mode or if your relational circuits are off, then I can't help anybody. But, and I love this stuff so much, Chris. I just quoted you yesterday about package joy. I was teaching on appreciation in our heart healing network and all this. It's my passion. So I love talking to you about this. And,
Great.
But let's talk about attunement when someone is coming to you and they are in either major distress, fear, anxiety, anger, and this is someone that you're either in relationship or maybe you're not. How can we help them? What is attunement and how can we attune with people?
So there's a rule about the brain that's so important, and that is anytime I feel alone in my pain, that creates the toughest conditions to process that pain. So feeling alone is really bad, right? It's just not good. So attunement is actually a way, when we attune with people, we're kind of tossing them a life preserver when they're drowning. And part of attunement is we use validation and comfort. So I validate by saying what I see or verbalizing what I'm hearing. So if someone comes to me in great distress, I would validate by going, wow, I see this is really upsetting for you. Like I can see on your face, with your words, you're describing it well. I hear it in your voice. You are really mad. So when you validate, it helps people feel seen. Like, okay, this person is on the same page with me. If I don't validate, then I will inevitably kind of minimize. Because some people try to comfort and fix before validating. Mm-hmm. And the result of that is if they don't feel seen by you first, you just go into like comforting, they're going to feel like you're not with me here. You're just trying to fix it. And I feel minimized, which reinforces I'm alone in this. We don't want that. Like just feeling alone in our pain is really, really, really hard for our brain to deal with that. So after I validate, then I would also comfort and say, what helps when you feel this way? Like I hear you're really upset. Would you like to go for a walk while we talk? Would it help if I grab you a blanket? Can I get you some water? Like, what do you need when you feel this way? Or what is good in the midst of the bad? So if I went to that step without validating, they're just like, no, you're trying to fix me. You're not even hearing me. Like they don't feel, heard or seen. So the comfort, just like, okay, what is good in this, or what helps when you feel this way? And it's kind of a strange question because a lot of people look at you like, what? What do you mean? What do I need? Like, we don't even know what we need because we're not always asked that question. People just go into fix-it mode. But that is a good question to ask. Like, well, what helps me when I feel this way? It helps me that you're listening and you're with me and you're not judging me. Like that helps. And it helps that you're paying attention to me when I'm sharing this, because this is really important to me. Like, it helps people basically have some personal preference, which is an important part of that relational circuit, is that brain region where we have personal preference. It's like, well, what do I need here? What does help? And that actually helps them to then feel connected with you. They're not alone. And it helps their relational circuit come online, because the relational circuit comes online. Whenever I expect joy, that relational circuit will come online. Like, ooh, the good stuff's coming. I'm going to see my friend. I can't wait to see my kids tonight, or whatever it is. That expectation of good stuff is your brain releases dopamine. So you get a reward when you look forward to something, and when that something is joy, it's a very life-giving. So what I find is when people interact with Emmanuel as well, they inevitably will feel seen by Emmanuel, and they'll feel understood, and they won't feel alone because he's with me. So that, as far as your brain's concerned, that is like a turning point. That's a game changer, because now I'm connected with you. I'm connected. I have an awareness of God being with me in this. My brain now has what it needs to navigate the hard stuff. So that's what we're after with attunement, is just being able to share the emotion together with one another. And while we're also being glad to be with people, like I'm really honored I can be here with you. I know this is frustrating. I know this is hard, but I'm glad I can be here with you. And it's genuine. It's sincere. If it's not genuine, it'll come across as very not genuine, and it won't go over as well. But it's genuine. And then people feel like, okay, you are with me here. And that helps. And that's what I need. Yeah.
So what about, we're talking about how sometimes people don't know what they need, and you can ask them, what do you need in what would be helpful to you? And they're like, I just want you to leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, just go away. Like,
Yeah.
because I tend to be that way. It's like, I need time.
Yeah.
Just step back and give me time. And then
Yeah.
I'll kind of come back online on my own and then re-engage. But is that a valid option?
I'm the same way, honestly. Like, it's very interesting with my wife, Jen, and I, because Jen, what helps her in those moments is actually to have connection. So she wants to connect and she wants to talk about whatever's going on. For me, oh no, I want some quiet. I want a little bit of space to catch my breath. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like, whatever you need, you're discovering and you're learning. Like, here's what helps, here's what hurts. Sometimes people know better what they don't need. So that might be an easier way up the mountain is, well, I know I don't need A, B, and C, but what I do need is some quiet. And we'll, as long as you eventually come back to the relationship, that builds trust that, okay, when you leave, you do come back. So I know if I do that with Jen, like, okay, give me a little time, I'll be back. As long as I come back, then she knows, okay, he needs the space, but he'll come back. So that coming back is kind of the crucial where you repair or you just reconnect. But yeah, I mean, knowing what you need, even if it's like space or quiet, or you just need to play some music for a while as you catch your breath. Whatever helps, really, whatever steps help. And sometimes it's learning by trial and error. So you might think I need something, it actually doesn't work. If I try Jen's solution where she wants to interact, if I try that, it usually just doesn't work very well. I'm like, no, this was a bad idea. I need to go get some quiet and come up for air. So I'll be back in a little bit.
So you kind of have to figure that out in relationships. And that sounds like a wiring issue, more introvert, extrovert, relationally connected. Where do I find my joy? Is it being alone? Is it being with people? And so that do you find like that kind of commingles with what's the way that someone's going to be able to reconnect? And I would be more like Jen of just wanting to know that I'm not alone. And sometimes when I'm, really angry, doesn't hardly happen at all, people, just saying, I will, go off. But that walking in nature, I mean, man, that I do that 7 days a week somewhere, even if I have to imagine a tree.
Nice. Yeah.
Live in the city. But that finding, I think, Chris, just, and such a good question posed by Kathy, like so many of us don't know what we need. We don't even know that maybe I just need some water right now, or I need to sit and have a cup of tea, or I do need a walk. And learning about ourselves is key, isn't it? Do you have ways to, I know it's not necessarily in the book, but how do we come to know ourselves? Like if we haven't been taught, and I know there's those stages of maturity and development where you learn to ask for what you need. And for those that didn't get that for whatever reason, and so now they don't even know what they need, how do we find out what we need?
Yeah, so it helps to know that some of us are high energy responders, some of us are low energy responders. So that's one of the 19 skills is learning, are you a high energy responder or low energy? And so people who are high energy responders, what helps them is high energy activities. So if I'm not doing well, I need to go for a run or bike ride. Like I need movement. I want music loud. And I can connect with God better when I'm active, right? So Jen is a more high energy responder, whereas I'm a very low energy responder. So with what I need is quiet, maybe some soft music, but just finding a quiet little place, where I'm not so maybe too much stimulation, because that will be overwhelming and I'll have a hard time returning to relational mode. If there's just a lot of like my kids are screaming and yelling and, having a blast, but they're very loud, I could just literally feel my relational brain start to fade because I'm a low energy responder. So it helps to, recognize, are you someone that is more restored by activity when you're overwhelmed or you're offline? Or are you someone who's more restored by low energy, like finding a little corner with your journal and your Bible, a cup of coffee and just like low energy. So yeah, and people can normally kind of identify pretty quickly, like if you're overwhelmed, would you rather go for a walk or would you rather go find a quiet place and sit? And then you can think, well, and maybe you can relate to both, but usually there's one a little bit more that I'll prefer over the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then it helps to say, okay, well, if I'm a high energy responder, then I know things that move me, like physically move, is going to be helpful. Or, playing a certain kind of worship music that is just, I can get into, that's going to help me. Or I can predict if I'm low energy, and I probably need some quiet, maybe dim the lights, look out the window, grab some tea.
Take a nap.
Take a nap. Exactly. Grab the journal. That's it. It's amazing. I mean, really, but it's like that helps to recharge our battery. So then we can go back and we feel a little more restored after that. Like, okay, I'm back into my right mind here. I feel a little more myself.
And I think it's important to recognize, that in others, that if, you're living with somebody or they're your close friend or spouse or children, to recognize that just because you're one way doesn't mean they're going to be that way, and to give people space and room for their different response. And I just, you're talking and I'm totally smiling, laughing because I'm a 5 miles a day walk, jog person.
Wow.
And if I don't get that, I get agitated. Actually. And just even if I get 3 miles, it's okay. But I have to have that. But also conversely, I've been doing a lot of meditation and intentionally every single morning and deep breathing and journaling a lot more. And it has really helped because I am a super high energy person.
Okay.
And it's helped me tremendously so I'm finding though now, Chris, that I can do both. Now napping once a year, but the meditate, I'm craving the quieting now more. It's going to a deep place in my heart, in my soul, going, Melinda, finally. Because I find too, and maybe this is true, that we can even use that high energy response as even like a cover, like a beep, as Ed Curry talks about, as even if it's not a toxic thing like eating 17 donuts or something. But we can actually look to maybe a high energy response as a way to not actually deal with what we need to deal with. And I'm not giving myself away here at all. I'm saying other people might do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
But, we could use that as I just need to do this but we're not actually getting in touch with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, anything, it's kind of like, your nervous system needs joy and rest, high energy joy and low energy rest. And your nervous system needs this rhythm. And when I don't get that, then what happens is I will artificially compensate. So I'll artificially compensate with pseudo joys or pseudo rest. So like, for me, I grew up, my family quieted by just vegging in front of the television. So our pseudo quieting was just turn on the TV and veg, for hours. Like that was what we really needed, was some quieting, but we didn't know we needed quieting, or we just didn't have that skill very well. So we would go to maybe TV for quieting. And then I would go to sugar for my pseudo joy because I feel a little better with some sugar. But, we need the real thing, which is that joy and rest. Otherwise, we're very vulnerable for artificial high energy things or low energy. And it can be socially acceptable or not. Like, some of it is like just sugar, but that's also where some, pretty heavy addictions can come into play too. It's like whatever your brain bonds with, it's easy to bond with, but it's hard to turn off. So getting the real thing, getting the good stuff of joy and rest really does keep us in our relational sweet spot. And that's what we're after.
Yeah. And even talking about joy and quiet, a moment ago, we were talking about how that high vibration joy high that we can have. But then really, I know the definition of joy that we talk a lot of, we've heard you guys mention it a lot, and we teach on this, that joy isn't necessarily that high vibration of elation or happy, happy, clappy.
Yeah.
It's knowing that someone is happy to be with you. So even in that quieting place, knowing that you have somebody that's attuning with you and wants to be with you, even in your low place, can bring you joy and can fuel that need in you for running on joy. Because we're designed, I know Wilder talks about that, that's really the only thing we were meant to run on is joy.
Yeah.
And all of the other stuff was never meant to be. It's a reality of where we are because of the nature of our planet. But that's not what we were created and designed for. So learning how to step into the realm of joy in that context, even when you're resting, even when you're in that quiet, that ebb and flow and that rhythm, is so important. I think, especially like right now, it seems like everybody is running on high RPM, intense emotion, whether it's fear, anger, righteous indignation, vehemently opposed to XYZ or vehemently for XYZ. There's like this heightened thing. And I look at what I see and I'm thinking that the neurological things that are being cemented into people, even during the reality of what's happening right now in the world around us, being able to step into the quiet in the midst of that high RPM is vital. Like we have to have that. And just, I think, because, we've studied a lot of the brain science, we've learned a lot from Life Model and Carl Lehman and Thrive and all you guys that are talking about that. I know enough to know that the neural pathways of society at large are in danger of being cemented in some really bad patterns.
You said it well. And you know what? Your brain, your normal can change based on the environment, right? So I might, when I'm used to running high in maybe fear and anger, and I'm just kind of stuck in that place, pretty soon your nervous system says, oh, this is my new normal. So what that means is I will feel myself in those particular states. So I will gravitate toward those particular states when that is my normal. And I mean, if you think about this from a developmental point of view, like when a baby is bonding with a parent, a caregiver, they have somebody who's glad to be with them, that high energy joy. But when they look away, they gaze avert, they look away for a pause to just catch their breath, that caregiver or that parent is still there. So what makes the quieting safe is that I'm not alone. Somebody's still with me and they're ready for when I'm ready to enter back into joy, because I'll do the joy and rest thing back and forth. So what your brain learns is it's good and it's safe for me to quiet, because quiet always leads back to joy. And that joy is basically connecting with mom, dad, caregiver, whoever that person is. And yeah, you said it well. Like our world right now is very unregulated. Like we are in enemy mode and we don't know how to press the pause button. And so in a sense, our normal is shifting to this upset, high energy. It's called, sympathetic arousal state, which just means the accelerator on your nervous system is pressed. We're not using the brake. We're just going. And we can feel it, for example, when at the end of the day, we try to go to bed and we're laying in bed and our mind won't stop. Mm-hmm. That's just your nervous system is still used to that high energy. So like one of the best things we can do is take a breath. Like deep breathing activates the brakes. So the parasympathetic branch is actually activated when we breathe deeply from like our belly. So when you just take those deep breaths, it already helps you to start pausing some of the craziness, quieting the body, quieting the mind, and in a sense, allowing a reset so that my relational circuit comes back on again. But it's really hard because your brain's an amplifier. So I will amplify whatever's in my environment. So it's like if you're with someone who's really mad and, for whatever reasons, you'll find that you can get really mad with them because your brain is an amplifier. So it's going to amplify whatever's in the environment unless I've had a lot of good training on joy and peace. And then my brain will actually help to turn down the volume and bring some peace and some calm. So we kind of need these givers of peace and joy, so to speak, to spread the good stuff, because right now our world in many ways is on fire and people don't know how to put that fire out. And so the extinguisher basically is helping people get out of enemy mode, back into relational mode where they can quiet and they can see others as God sees them, and that's a skill that's accessible only when I'm in relational mode. Can I see, Jesus, what do you see when you look at these people? Because I see a bunch of people I'm mad at. I don't like them. I feel threatened by them. But Jesus, what do you see? And that is such a game changer when we can see others as God sees them. It disarms the landmines that's in the environment when we can do that. But it's hard to do when we're in enemy mode because our brain just wants to put gasoline on a fire. And it doesn't take long for that fire to spread.
I'm thinking too that the news, which I never watch, we can become addicted to it.
Yeah.
Because there's that adrenaline release, adrenaline, cortisol. I mean, even the tone of voice in mainstream media news, and this is not a political statement, it's just a fact. If you turn it on, even the tone of voice, the way they present things immediately brings, I need to be on high alert.
Yeah.
And it's going to be bad news, no matter what they say. And, they're staring into the camera, making sure that, they see you, that you need to be afraid of this. So really put us on, and I'm talking any mainstream media. This is not, again, not a political statement, but it really,
media in general
puts us on high alert. And is that one reason why I know people feel like if they have knowledge, then they're in control. If they have information, they're in control. But I feel like so much of what's going on right now is that people feel out of control. And so how can I control my environment? And even watching the news, well, that means I'll be in control because I'll have information. But I feel like it feeds into the fear because they're just getting fear from the media. And we don't even really know what's going on. So how do we stop that cycle of being even addicted to social media, the news, something that is causing us to, like you're saying, it becomes our norm. It's like, I've got to feel adrenaline rush, even if it's fear, because feels normal to me. How do we help ourselves first, but then how do we ourselves if we're recognizing that, if you're hearing this going, oh my gosh, I've realized that I've, come more into living out of my sympathetic nervous system or more living in fear and anxiety. How do I come out of that back to a normal state of joy and quiet?
Yeah, I love how you shared that. Like, you're exactly right with the news, like the intensity, the sounds, the images. I mean, basically, if you think about it, news stations want you to come to their channel and their station because viewership equals money. So, and one of the best short-term motivators for people is fear. I mean, it's not really a good long-term motivator, but if I get afraid, I will keep coming back trying to resolve something, and I want to see what's happening. So we bond with it. Basically, you could look at it that way. Like, your brain is a bonding machine. So we bond with this stuff, and even as we bond with our phones, and like people actually get withdrawal symptoms from trying to stop it. We feel driven. Like, in some studies I mentioned in the book, like even students with their phones off are still thinking about their phones, right? I mean, we bond with stuff. So the good news is you can train your brain to learn that I will not die but live. So even if I'm tempted to give in to the news cycle and just to keep plugging in and to leave it on, you can turn it off. As you said, one of the best things we can do is balance the joy with all the other stuff that's in our life right now. Like, what things float your boat? What things fill your joy bucket with the good stuff? And how do you maximize that? Now, what things rob your joy? How do you minimize that? So if people want to know what's going on in the world, find trusted news sources, but minimize your exposure. Because inevitably, a lot of the news is just designed to keep you coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I bond in fear with these stations or this, whatever I listen to or watch, then my brain is going to want to keep going back. So turn it off, turn it down, minimize it, and then actively pursue the things that really does fill your bucket. And honestly, back to that skill of like, God, what do you see when you look at this? And how, if Jesus intercedes for us before the Father's throne, one of the skills we practice at Thrive is how can we join Jesus in praying for the things that he's praying for? Because he's talking to the Father about this stuff. So we can join him in that process and say, well, Lord, I also want to talk to the Father with you about this stuff. Like, so what do you see here when you look at this? What are you praying? How are you praying? How can I join you in praying for these things so that we have your peace? It's basically like, Peter walking on the water toward Jesus. I mean, literally looking over at the wind and the waves and the loud sounds, he starts to sink, right? And, he had to like keep our eyes fixed on Jesus's face, so to speak, because there's other distractions, and the enemy works the enemy's been studying humankind for a very long time. So he knows how to manipulate people. And one of the ways is by making loud noises to scare you, and just by keeping you in a fear state, because it keeps you in enemy mode, which is your most vulnerable state in enemy mode. We're the most, from that perspective, we are very vulnerable to the enemy's schemes in enemy mode, because I'm not going to be in the best version of myself when I'm stuck in enemy mode. And anything that upsets you, when you focus on it, will put you in enemy mode. So think about that. I make the case in my book as it relates to trying to, live with an awareness of God's presence, lead that Emmanuel lifestyle. Like, just thinking about the things that upsets you can turn off your relational circuit and put you in enemy mode. So that's just one of those things very practically, like, okay, so just thinking about what's happening in our world and feeling the dread in my stomach, like just how your brain responds when you open up a joy file. Well, guess what happens when we open up a unpleasant file, right? With pain or distress, the same, you get that response with the cortisol and the stress hormones. And it's not going to be easy to get out of that cycle. Like, even a good brain surgeon friend of mine said, even 6 minutes in a negative emotion leaves cortisol streaming through your blood for 24 hours. So 6 minutes, negative emotion, 24 hours of stress hormones. So if we do the math, like, that's not good, right? That's a long time we're going to be robbed, and it's going to be hard to quiet when that's happening. So in a sense, we have to like actively take the steps and the measures to protect ourselves, to kind of gird our minds, so to speak, and our ears and our eyes, and balance it. Like, just find a balance that works for you, instead of just getting kind of stuck in enemy mode and focusing on all the bad stuff that's happening. And so when I encounter people who are like super upset, remember, the goal is to help people not feel alone in their upset. That's where the attunement, like, yeah, I can see this is really upsetting. Like, what helps you when you feel this way? What needs? Let's see if we can get relational and ask God where he is in this. Let's ask Jesus, what is he doing in this mess? Because it's a mess. And that is the game changer. I mean, just being able to have that Emmanuel lifestyle of, okay, I'm scared about these things, but Lord, what do you see when you look at this? And Lord, are you worried? Because if he's worried, then I'm going to be in big trouble. So Lord, are you worried? Because if you're not, I want some of what you have. Right. Yeah. And I have to practice that a lot, just with the struggles, like as a parent with my kids, like, what is the world going to look like for my kids as they get older? Okay, Lord, what do you see about that? I want to see your face. Are you worried about that? Like, I want your peace. I want your joy. And honestly, that is such a game changer. That skill of being able to practice finding God's peace when there is no peace is just really, it just changes everything, and it anchors us. And then we can be kind of stewards of peace, and we can pass the peace on in our networks and with our people, with our family, with our friends. The group of people who has an awareness of God's presence in the mess and the yuck, that's a group of people that's going to change the world. You know what I mean? Like, that is a relational revival that will change the world. Those people that live with God's peace and God's presence, I'll tell you, I mean, nothing can stop that. That to me it is what I'm after. I want to live that kind of a life where I can hold on to his peace, or if I lose it, get back there quickly. And that will spread when you go to the grocery store, when you interact with people, like that will spread. And you will see it and you'll feel it. And people will, in a sense, relationally wake up. Like you'll be one of the ways that God helps people to kind of relationally wake up. So
that's so good. This one of my favorite questions in leading Emmanuel prayer sessions is, Jesus, what do you want me to know about this?
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
That question's, I mean, that's an amazing question, because the things that God can say and do and show you, I mean, it just, he's just, we never know what he's going to do, but he knows what's needed. And I love that. That's a well we want to drink from right there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. Where can people find you? Where can they buy the book?
Yeah. So our website is ThriveToday.org, just ThriveToday.org. You know, I put together an assessment. You can check your relational temperature. There's assessment questions. You can go through it. Really helpful just to see areas, you know, where you're strong and areas that still need some work. And there's just more resources at the website related to the book. The book's on the website as well. And just a lot of good stuff there. People can learn more. I'm doing a webinar and some events coming up as well. They can learn all about that on the Joy Switch part of the website.
Well, I do want to add just a little PS here to anybody that's listening to the podcast that has had one-on-one ministry with us. You most likely have heard us talk about the 30-day reset from Thrive Today.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the guy that we're talking to right now. This is the organization that birthed that tool, because we have that on something on our website called the Peace Kit, which we put together with like the videos of Shalom from My Body, and Melinda leads an audio group Emmanuel in there, and then the blessing song to just let wash over you, and the 30-day reset. And whenever we send follow-up to our clients that we've met and had one-on-one ministry with, they all hear about that as a way to a simple, practical tool that will help increase their capacity for joy and connection with Jesus. So for anybody that's listening that connect the dots, this is the guy.
Yeah, I've got the 30-day reset taped on my wall. It's been there for like a year and a half. So
that's awesome.
It's such a good, and it works. I've shared that with people. I won't go into the story now, but it definitely works. So Chris, it's been such a joy. Yeah. I just encourage people to reach out, go to ThriveToday.org, check out their resources, life-changing, truly life-changing, that I wish the whole world would get in their hands. And I hope this book just explodes off the shelf, because if everyone had this, our world would be a much more enjoyable, peaceful place to be in right now. But thank you for what you're putting out there in the world, Chris, and for what contribution you're making and how much you're giving, this life-giving, getting into the people's hands. So thank you so much. We really honor you and bless you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, friends. Just hanging out with you is an absolute joy. Any chance to connect with you guys is always a gift. Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you're doing, because your stuff is changing the world, and I'm truly honored to be a part of it.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends.
And please stay tuned for more great content coming your way.